Hello, and welcome to today's webcast entitled Gaining Intelligence from Business Data, Information Strategy for Private Equity. During the presentation, we'll have a question and answer session. You can ask questions at any time during the presentation. Click the green Q&A icon on the lower left-hand corner of your screen. Type your question in the open area and click Ask to submit. If you would like to view the presentation in a full screen view, click the full screen button in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Press the Escape key on your keyboard to return to your original view. For optimal viewing and participation, please disable your pop-up blockers. Should you need technical assistance, as a best practice, we suggest you first refresh your browser. If that does not resolve the issue, please click on the Support option in the upper right-hand corner of your screen for online troubleshooting. It is now my pleasure to turn the webcast over to Harry Stahl, partner with SunGard Consulting Services. Harry, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and welcome to the second in our three-part webinar series, which explores how a holistic approach to your business can transform your operations, increase efficiency, and build your competitive edge. I'm Harry Stahl. I'm a partner with SunGard Consulting Services, focused on asset management. And in today's session, the second in the series, we will be exploring how information strategy can help your business. Joining me for today's session is Jason Haft, who is a principal in our asset management business, who has long experience in the private equity space, as well as with our InvestTrend and related products. The structure of today's conversation is relatively straightforward. We're going to begin, though, with a review of industry trends and ideas about data and information, specifically relating to private equity, before looking at some of the specifics of how information strategy can help with those challenges. I'll turn it over to Jason to go through the findings that we have from the industry. Jason?
Thanks, Harry. At the beginning of this year, SunGard commissioned the TAD Group to conduct a brief survey of 119 senior private equity executives across the U.S., Europe, and Asia to identify the key issues facing a lot of our general partner clients. In reviewing those findings, we found four main themes that we wanted to share with you guys today and talk in a little bit more detail. The first is around improving operation efficiency. The second was around providing transparency. The third was around managing compliance initiatives. And the fourth was around enhancing the decision-making process. What we found in the realm of the improving operational efficiencies, what we found was that the alternative investment industry has matured a significant way over the past 10 to 15 years. And most of the asset managers in place currently do have a system or systems in place, but the issue remains is that a lot of firms, while they've put in different systems to solve for different needs, there's little integration that's going on with those systems. And where we see that exists as a problem, and the reason why we know it's a problem, is as we start to look at some of the items that are limiting these firms' ability to manage their business. We're seeing a lot of it around managing information, getting updates of information, and we believe that partially in regards to the duplicative nature of having these bespoke systems that aren't tied to one another and aren't working together to make sure that these processes are being done as efficiently as possible. So that was certainly one of the trends that we found from the market research that we did. Was just ensuring that there's a lot of room for improvement, specifically around integrating of information and making sure that information can allow for an optimal operations. The second item that we identified was around transparency. As we looked at the data, the majority of the GPs that we spoke with found that it was important to provide investor transparency and provide investors with a view of information into their systems. They also recognize some of the challenges that go along with having that information available to them at a moment's notice, and the challenges that go in with the due diligence process and how that process has changed significantly over the past 5 to 7 years. So it's clear that the GPs are acknowledging that there is a need for providing more information. They recognize that the limited partners that they're investing with them are certainly looking for more and more information. Yet, as we look at this, little is being done to address this need. One of the most telling signs that we saw was only 23% of the firms that we polled said that they provide interactive access to their investors regarding their portfolio and fund accounting system. Yet the vast majority feel that it is very important to provide that type of information. And we're seeing that as well within the marketplace. Our pipeline today is we're seeing more and more limited partners who are looking for ways that they can start to enhance their ability to manage information, and they're looking to implement systems as well so that they can better manage the flow of information, better manage the assets that they have so that they can improve their process for making decisions and doing analysis on the investments that they have. It's a logical progression of what we've seen, where it seems private equity, it's certainly not, they're certainly having, while there are exceptions, private equity doesn't tend to be trailblazers in the form of providing technology and having technology and systems in place, yet and the limited partners tend to lag behind them. But I think we're getting to a point now where we're seeing a point in the market where that's catching up. As the alternative investments becomes less and less alternative and more mainstream, the limited partners' ability to manage the information, to manage the thousands of investments that they have across the different managers, and start to do that analysis on where they are from the portfolio, that need to have that access of information from the general partners is going to become increasingly important. One of the next items that we had discussed was managing the compliance initiatives. Clearly since 2008 with the introduction of FATCA, Form PF, AIF-MD, all the different regulations that are out there today that many registered advisors have to comply with, they're adding increased complexities to the overall process. Certainly most of the firms that we spoke with, clearly agree that there's a significant challenge in dealing with a lot of the regulatory issues, and have cited time and again that especially around the uncertainty and the costs that go along with managing the regulations, it is clearly an issue that firms are expecting to have to deal with. I think the one trend that we know for certain with the regulations is that it's only going to get more complex from here out. It's not, it's not going away anytime soon. So looking to have something in place to allow for these firms to then build these solutions out so that they can solve for these challenges is becoming increasingly more important. And as we said, it's the regulatory compliance, it certainly is a challenge, and there are people who are just still looking to define what is the solutions they have. We've listed over here on the left just all the different regulations that people have come across and have had to deal with. And in the past, I think if it was one regulation initiative that they had to comply with, then these firms would look at to Excel to be a reasonable solution. But clearly what we're seeing and what we're hearing from our clients directly is that it's just not a scalable solution. Keeping all this information on offline systems, especially think of all the different groups within your firm that rely on that information, whether it's compliance, you need input from investor relations, from your accounting folks, from your middle office who are monitoring the investments and are tracking a lot of the details behind those investments. All of those different points and all those different groups within a single organization having just Excel as a system in place certainly seems it's going to present, it's just not, as we said, it's just not a scalable solution. And looking for ways to optimize that. So when you have AIFMD that's asking for virtually 2/3 of the request is asking for the same information you filled out for Form PF, making sure that having a solution in place to allow you to then quickly pivot from one to the next is going to allow you to then manage this process more efficiently and more effectively. Because the increase in regulation and the increased burden that's coming on your team, most firms that we speak with aren't looking to introduce a whole new compliance, triple the size of the compliance team because the amount of regulation has increased. It's incremental additions from a resource perspective, if any, and having to deal with this through just better processes and better integrations of systems.
Yeah, at SunGard we did a broader study focused purely on compliance across all of our financial services clients. So I can do about 400 clients in the industry, and we found the same pattern, right? People have invested time to think about which regulatory regimes are going to affect you and to begin to get a sense of how to check the box for the things that are very near term. But people are struggling to move beyond that check the box approach to something that's more strategic, that's going to be able to solve the problem in a more dynamic way over time. So we'll look at that in the context of information strategy a little later. But as Jason said, Excel is a proxy for that check the box approach. Organizationally, it's just a couple of people working extra hours beyond their day job. Not going to fly when we're looking at the scope and scale of what we're dealing with here, as many of you know. Jason.
Thanks, Harry. And then the last part is, we've talked a lot about, operational efficiency and the compliance initiatives, and we focused a lot on the cost that those represent for firms. But at the end of the day, bringing the information together, having a better handle on information, it's all about being able to enhance the decision-making process and being able to. We've touched on this on some of our other sessions, but it's a matter of focusing your team's work on what we want them to be focused on and what they do best, and allowing you to make sure that you've got the infrastructure in place, have the technology in place to ultimately make decisions faster, quicker, and more reliably. That ultimately is why, one of the key themes that we've seen from an information management perspective of why people are looking to engage in some of those processes. It's ultimately about being able to do things better and faster, and that's something that certainly bore out in our conversations about looking for technology to be an enabler to allow for this process to go smoothly and to improve the quality of the investment decision-making process. Ultimately, that's why all of us are here is to make sure that process runs as smoothly as possible. And we certainly don't want to do anything that could jeopardize that or present any additional challenges with that. We want to look for ways that we can improve that. And with that, I will turn it over to Harry, who's going to talk about how we can get there and how we can look to enhance those decision-making processes with a strong information management process in place.
Thanks, Jason. Or at least how we think we can help. Look, a lot of us think of ourselves as being in an information business, taking in information about the market, about potential investments, and transforming that into value. So all of the things that we do here are part of that. When you stop to think about that, it's worth noting that there are real disciplines around information management to help think through the problem in a more fine-grained way at each stage of the information lifecycle, where if defining what information is there, creating, maintaining, distributing it, consolidating it, analyzing, and then, of course, the business of information lifecycle of archiving and even getting rid of information. The wheel on the left is pretty dense. I'm not going to unpack all of that in this session, but it's a tool that we use when thinking in more detail about some of these projects. The life cycle is on the outside. We recognize that there are systems, types of systems and technologies that support each of the phases of that life cycle, and they are different. Some things are creating information, databases store it, other things distribute, all familiar. And in the center is kind of the target of the various disciplines, information management disciplines that are available to help think through these problems. Data governance, of course, applying to everything, but also thinking about master data management, data integration. What does data quality mean? You know, what is the data modeling? What is the metadata? That is the tracking of which information you actually have. And then, of course, business intelligence is clearly important. It's come up in the LP comments that Jason mentioned already. Of course, each of these generic disciplines applies in the private equity life cycle, and Jason, you deal with these all the time.
Yeah, sure. So if you think about just the typical private equity life cycle of where of how day-to-day work is being driven, right? We start up at the top, you know, for our GP members on the phone. You know, you're going out to investors, you're looking to fundraise capital, and then, you know, for everybody else, it's a matter of looking at the various investments that are out there, trying to define what are the right opportunities, looking at your exposure, looking for ways that you can ensure that that your investments are monitoring well and doing well, and having all that information available so that you can allow for facilitate the valuation process, and all of that feeds into the day-to-day accounting so that you can get your reporting out of from whatever system that you're looking to get out of it. So if you think of it within this frame of just day-to-day from cradle to grave, the process of the private equity life cycle and all the different pieces of information that come out of it, the inputs into the process, the outputs out of those individual processes, and making sure that there's a strategy of how you collect all of that information and manage that is really what we want to focus on today.
Exactly. So what we're going to do going forward here is take a few minutes to kind of go at least one step further and think about that work at each stage of the life cycle. So define, create, maintain. This is where we figure out what are the data elements involved, how do we assemble them, where do we put them, and how do we keep the updates going. In that context, obviously the data model counts, data governance, the definition of what is quality information counts. We need to manage master data, like all of the reference data, all of the market information, all of that stuff is master data. And metadata is just data about data. What information do I actually have? When did this come in? Is it the right information on the right client at the right time, or the right investment at the right moment? So when you think about that, I mean, Jason, you're working with our clients on these elements all the time. Maybe sort of give us some examples as you see it through this part of the life cycle.
You know, yeah, I think it's certainly when we talk of the metadata and the data modeling, you know, we certainly want to talk about it's always important to talk about the type of reporting that we want to be able to generate and the type of reporting we want to provide, you know, for our internal, external stakeholders, and how these processes that we talked about on the previous slide, how those then feed into that, right? Where are the investors and the contacts, and where are they located? What are the different people who are investing in our firms? The portfolio monitoring, you know, understanding not just what are the deals that we're making, but then understanding the exposure that you currently have. Where are the concentrations that the investments are being made? The metrics that we want to have out there, you know, coming up and you know, starting from a standpoint of reporting and defining where our reporting, how that wants to be structured, has always been something that we've worked with a lot of the firms in our work to really start with that answer and then build out what the questions are and how we can better define that process.
Thanks. So when we think about reporting, there are particular ways of evaluating what the strategy ought to be. And when you think, for example, about reports that cover overlapping data, AFMD and Form PF, actually some of the core information in the U.S. is in Form ADV. The strategy for solving it is driven by the complexity of what you're dealing with. If you think about it in this simple graphical way, the complexity of the individual report, ADV is simple, Form PF is more complicated, the AFMD Annex 4 is yet more data, you might be able to just solve that with some report automation that just pulls and generates the report and sends it out. There are point solutions that do that. But if you're looking at some other things about the complexity of overlapping reporting requirements, where there are shared data elements, overlapping or mismatched reporting cycles, different filing protocols, other people needing to be involved, maybe your depository needs to be involved if you're looking at AFMD, but they don't perform PF, language might get involved, all of those things, then that starts to raise the question of not just automating the one report, but really how are you doing the overall solution? Like, what is the data management infrastructure? Are you staging this overlapping content in a place that you can slice and dice and generate reporting in a consistent way for the multiple uses? That may be efficient with the things that you've got now and might be essential if these things are going to change or other reporting things are going to come on top of that, which is, I think, where we believe we are. So we are working with a number of clients who are thinking about and evaluating these kinds of solutions for compliance reporting. When we think about distribution, consolidation, and analysis, this is another place where we at SunGard work a lot with our clients. This is, again, governance is there. Business intelligence comes into play here. How do you consolidate, slice, dice, visualize, and distribute to your end users, including your investors, this kind of information? And Jason, you're working with folks on these, so you should probably comment on what you're seeing.
Right, and I think it ties back as well to some of the findings we see, as part of our TAB group study, where 75% of the firms that we surveyed are saying that, seeing the importance of being able to provide limited partners with more dynamic access. The paradigm that it's been to date has been, at a quarter lag, you're providing static documents that are showing where, how the investments are performing, how the fund as a whole is performing, but just really providing PDFs. But the LPs are looking for more direct access. They're trying to shrink that time frame down of how quickly it is that they have a view of the valuations of the investments, their value of the different investments and the performance of the different fund managers that they invest with. And they're looking for ways that they can get more real-time information. And that's certainly from the, taking the paradigm of the LP portal of just being a static document, now allowing them to have a more robust experience has been something that we've been working very closely with a number of our firms to try and increase that performance, increase that user experience. And to do that, it's requiring the consolidation of information. It's usually coming from other systems that aside from just an accounting platform or a contact management platform, but bringing a lot of those different data systems together in some sort of data warehouse to help consolidate that information to allow for that portal to be a lot more powerful. And it's not just for the external stakeholders, but as well as the internal stakeholders that are involved. They're the ones who are looking to, that information that's reviewed in the Monday meeting. How does that information then make its way into when those investments now become fund investments? How do we then tie that back and start to measure the internal people within the firm and allow us to see who's doing, who's been some of the top performers and associate that from a real-time access. A lot of times that process is just being done offline in Excel, but bringing that information together and tying tying that information from when you're starting to do that analysis and looking at the investment thesis to the point of when the investment's been made and the value has been recognized from those investments, being able to analyze what's gone well, what's allowed you to, what's done well and allow you to recognize a lot of those gains, and being able to capitalize on that and improve the performance on the next one is certainly that's important for a lot of firms. So certainly when we think of consolidating and analyze that information, it's not just LP focused and focused on allowing your investors having that information, but there's benefit within the whole organization to having a sound strategy in place.
Right. I mean, the other piece we just talked about it in a different sense is compliance information, which really, when you think about what regulation is driving at, is to try and identify, measure, and drive out risk. This kind of analysis is a way of getting at firm-related risk internally as well. No sense providing it in a form to the outside world if you're not thinking about it internally and making sure that you can measure and manage all of that. So there are tools and disciplines and technologies to be applied here if you think about the nature of the problem in that particular way. At the end of the life cycle, you think, well, archive and destroy, this is, it seems obvious on the surface, but the requirements for retaining information actually vary. So information lifecycle management is not mysterious, but worth doing really well. You don't want to you want to be able to find information that you need to get for your own purposes or regulator purposes or whatever external investor purposes. When you need it, you want to be able to get at it. And of course, in terms of destroying data, not only do you want to be able to say, look, I don't need to carry the overhead of unnecessary archives, but more importantly, don't destroy stuff that you want to keep. And if things are distributed in an informal way over individuals' hard drives, almost impossible to control that. So the disciplines of information lifecycle management apply to all the information that we've been talking about here. So in that sense, this is a kind of quick walking tour of the kinds of ideas and problem-solving techniques that we think are useful in this business, and we're certainly having fun working with our clients thinking about them. The sort of summary view is to take a holistic view of the overlapping information that you're dealing with, compliance and other information, evaluate what tools you need to handle the full information lifecycle, and it may be different things at different stages. Design a target infrastructure and the organization that can operate that infrastructure. There's no sense having tools if you haven't got the operating model to deal with it, as we talked about in the last session, of course. And then lay out a roadmap. What do you need to do in the near term, in the medium term, in the long term? What are the investments, and how do you manage the changes in the organization as well as technology to get there? Now, I would say that some of these concepts from information management seem abstract and maybe esoteric in some contexts, but they're really just good tools to think through problems in a rigorous way. And the resulting roadmap doesn't necessarily need to be a massive piece of technology. It may just be choose the right tool and deploy it in the right way with some skill in order to get the maximum leverage out of it. So that is the kind of approach that we are taking, and we are having a lot of fun doing it. That completes the content section of today's webinar. I'll turn it over to our operator for a moment.
At this time, we would like to take any questions you might have for us today. To ask a question via the web, click the Q&A button on the lower left-hand corner of your screen, type your question in the open area, and click Ask to submit. Hello, and welcome to today's webcast.
We always have is, will this will this recording be available after the meeting? And the answer is yes. You'll receive an email with information on how to download access to the recording soon after the call is complete. The first question we have here, it looks like it relates to portals and accessing information. The question is, we have multiple systems in place, each that provides data at different times. How do we control when this data is available? Harry, you want to take this one?
Sure. And think about the layers of this. The first question is really a data governance question. What's the correct timing or time window for a piece of information? That's a data quality question, and if you're clear about that, then it's relatively easy to figure out the technology implementation. The other piece of control you want is who can get that information. You may have internal access to a wide range of things, but only quarter-end information available to outside parties. So data governance first, then the integration layer that pulls together the information from heterogeneous sources. The implication of the question is you have a mixed environment, which makes sense. A lot of our clients do. If you're looking at information that needs to be consolidated, you think about where to pull that together and stage it. An operational data store, a data warehouse, that kind of infrastructure. There are a few ways to slice that, but that's the second piece of the puzzle. And the third is really metadata, right? Data about data. What is the source? What is the timing of that information? If you can track the metadata and bring that into your staging area and apply the data governance rules, you have complete control over how to do that. And a lot of the technologies that we offer and that our clients are working with from other parties provide those capabilities if you think about building it in from the beginning. So the next question coming up is what do you see as overlap between FormPF and AIFMD? You mentioned this earlier. Jason, you want to take a...
Sure. So I think the general rule of thumb that we've been seeing is it's about a third for FormPF, a third for AIF. A third of the questions from FormPF and AIFMD are the same. A third are similar but asked slightly differently, and the last third is being unique to each of the two regulations. When talking to some of our clients who were early adopters from the FormPF solution, I think what's important to note is when they then had to look at the AIFMD requirements, it was almost as if it was a brand new implementation because they were treating it in a very tactical manner of, we want to solve for FormPF. I think the lesson learned here is that when you're looking to solve for the regulation challenges and you're looking to solve for how you're going to answer the new regulation needs and fulfill your requirements, coming up with an approach that can be universally applied, so that for the next new regulation that comes out that is going to have potentially asking a similar form, or as FormPF changes and AIFMD changes, which seems to be the pervading theme, is that we know it's going to change, it's just a matter of when. Building it in a manner that's going to allow for that flexibility and allow for changes and making that investment up front to make sure that you have that flexibility is something that's clearly going to pay off down the road. So we have another question here. What approach do you recommend for defining where reporting gets done? And the example they provided is we build our analytics in the investment portfolio platform versus in a data warehouse.
So this actually relates to the prior question about mixed systems. I mean, the first question is, what's the system of record for the information that you're analyzing? If all the data elements are in one platform and you don't have to retrofit or pull in from other sources, it's worth considering whether you can generate those reports there. We find that a lot of the analytics that we're looking at actually pull together from multiple systems in our client's environment. So the immediate pragmatic answer is a data warehouse is a good place to do that. The other dimension of that is performance and BI tools, because the structure of the data in an accounting platform is different or can be different than in a data warehouse where you have a different database model. And if you're looking at analytics across time, across multiple funds, and so on, the slice and dice capabilities get faster and easier to implement with a different database structure. So even if you do have the source content in one system, it's worth raising the performance question about how rich the BI tool set is that you want to use, and because that may drive the question of staging it in a warehouse where you can manipulate it. It's also, in very large firms, it's worth considering splitting where you are doing the actual accounting versus doing the analytics, because the analytics can sometimes drag down the performance of your accounting platform if the burden is too heavy. So those three considerations come into play, and as you might imagine, netting that out, frequently people look towards some kind of a data warehouse solution for if they're doing any kind of complex analytics. Okay, thank you very much. That completes the content and Q&A section. What's next in this series is on Thursday. We're going to be looking at a session called Disrupting Operational Status Quo, the Role of Managed Services, which is a different flavor of solutions for the industry. And as you may know, we did on the 19th a section on transforming the operating model. You can also get access to that through a link that we can provide. So we look forward to engaging you in those sessions. In closing, we'd like to thank you again for joining us and participating in this session today. If we did not get to your questions, we will be sure to follow up with you directly after the event. Feel free to contact us by the email shown on this screen to learn more about this topic and how SunGard can help you. Thank you, and goodbye for now.
Thank you again for joining us today. This does conclude today's webcast, and you may now disconnect.